by taxpayer dollars, except in the event of rape, incest, or in the danger to the life of the mother. This floor substitute, additionally, with respect to this bill, also reintroduces by removing the repeal of two different code sections, also reinserts gross fetal abnormalities as an exception to the taxpayer funding and removes the prohibition on funding of hospitals, which I think was a provision either intended or unintended of the underlying bill. And so, Mr. Speaker, this language should be all too familiar to those who have served here for any length of time and reflects those well accepted and long accepted exceptions to taxpayer funding of abortion.
Mr. Speaker.
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Will the delegate from Shenandoah yield for a question?
The delegate from Shenandoah yield for a question.
I yield.
Delegate will yield.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask the delegate, I recall as we sat at the Rules Committee on Friday, I guess it was Friday, it seems like years ago, but on Friday, suggested that the bill wasn't in its proper form because, and I think the suggestion was that the patron must have intended for this to be Hyde Amendment language and that we needed to amend it to just add a couple of exceptions because the underlying intent was to do what he just described, and the bill didn't successfully do it. I would ask the delegate, having read the bill and having read those sections that were going to be repealed, would he agree that the bill as introduced did not, in fact, intend to be a sort of a Hyde Amendment, but in fact was intended to repeal those sections that provided for exceptions for rape and incest, was very much intended to repeal those sections that protect pregnancies that would result in gross fetal abnormalities, and was in fact intended to not embody the Hyde Amendment that we've seen here years before, but to go much further than that and to in fact defund agencies like Planned Parenthood and other agencies that provide abortion services. Would the delegate agree that was the original intent of the bill?
The delegate from Shenandoah, delegate.
Mr. Speaker, there were several questions in that question, so I'm going to try to answer what I think is the intent of the gentleman's question. Of course, when I was speaking to my floor substitute just a moment ago, I was very careful to say whether intended or unintended. I don't know what the delegate's intention was. And I would say that the opportunity, furthermore, to discern, to ascertain what the delegate's intention was, certainly presented itself in committee. But we did not get that opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to flesh out what exactly his intention was and what it was not. And the delegate told me we'd get plenty of time to talk about this on the floor. So here we are on the day before crossover, spending all this time, rather than in committee, trying to discern what the delegate's intention was with respect to this language. What I do know, Mr. Speaker, is that this language that is before us right now contemplates all the exceptions that I heard the delegate talking about in a different committee on a different day, where I heard examples about the Texas example of a child that was not going to make it to live birth because of a gross fetal abnormality. It brought up we're taking head on the example that the delegate himself brought up of a 10-year-old girl getting pregnant because of a rape and how we would deal with that with taxpayer dollars. So there was plenty of time to talk about all the concerns the other side had about this issue, to try to find some common ground and find something to alleviate the concerns that have been expressed over and over again in different committees. But that opportunity was not afforded us, Mr. Speaker, in committee, because this got sent straight to the floor as what is very clearly a political maneuver, as has been reported in so many newspapers and news outlets to this date.
Mr. Speaker, will the
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Will the delegate yield for an additional question?
Will the delegate yield?
I yield.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask the delegate, without respect to what the intent was, would the delegate agree that the language of the bill does essentially the opposite of what his floor substitute does?
Mr. Speaker, I have said as much already, that the language of the underlying bill does not reflect the well-accepted Hyde Amendment language, and I don't know what the intention was or was not when it was drafted by a freshman who's never done this before, who put by request on this because he doesn't know exactly what that means. I'm not besmirching his abilities to draft a bill, Mr. Speaker. I just think we trust legislative services to give us a bill that we asked for, and I don't know precisely what he asked for, precisely what the exchange was. I don't know any of that. I just know that the opportunity we have here is to find ourselves with this bill that expresses a very valid idea that taxpayers shouldn't be forced to pay for an abortion if it violates their conscience or their deeply held religious beliefs. That is something we should be able to discuss without discussing the overall topic of abortion, about whether it's good, bad, right, wrong, whatever it means in the universe. We can discuss logically, methodically, what it means to have other people be forced to pay for these things. That's all this is about. And we're just trying to get it right in the sense that it reflects the long-standing, long-held federal language on this very issue of taxpayer funding of abortion.
The delegate from Fairfax.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
The delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, point of order. I don't believe that a floor substitute that has the effect of doing the exact opposite of what the introduced bill would be germane to the underlying bill, and I would suggest that this floor substitute is not germane to the bill.
House will be at ease. House will come in order. On the issue of germaneness, I rule that the substitute is not germane. The original bill was restricting use of public funds for abortion services. 11 lines were very clear. It defined the public services, it defined abortion services, public funds, and then it went on to repeal 32.1-92.1 and 32.1-92.2. I think the substitute is exactly the opposite of what the bill originally did, and that for that reason, I rule it's not germane, and I so rule.
Mr. Speaker.
The delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert.
Speaking to the ruling.
The delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, as I stated at the dais, it is our position, and of course you have ruled, that the floor substitute is to the same precise topic of taxpayer funding of abortion, but does so in a much more limited fashion, which is why we believe it is germane. As such, I would appeal the ruling of the chair.
So we're going to vote. All right. Shall the ruling of the chair be sustained?
Ayes and nays.
It's a recorded vote.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, parliamentary inquiry.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to be clear. If somebody agrees with your ruling, this is not germane, they should vote green on their voting board to indicate that the ruling will be sustained. That's a green vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Shall the ruling be sustained? She's going to need a minute. She's going to need a minute, y'all. The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 51, noes 48.
Ayes 51, noes 48. The ruling is sustained. Back to the bill. The delegate from Prince William, Delegate Mundon-King.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is not a gimmick or a joke.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
The delegate has the floor.
I don't think the delegate's presented his bill yet.
Oh, he hadn't pressed the button. I apologize. The delegate from Bedford, Delegate Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we present House Bill 404, a bill to codify the Hyde Amendment language in Virginia law. For over 50 years in this country, we've abided by this language. This comes from Congressman Hyde, who, after the Supreme Court made the ruling in the 70s, he made the assertion, and it got into the federal budget every year, that taxpayers should not be forced.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Mr. Speaker, we just discussed the fact that what the gentleman's bill does is not, in fact, the Hyde Amendment, that it just defunds Planned Parenthood and other agencies. So the gentleman doesn't seem to be speaking to the bill.
The delegate has to speak to the bill, not to the bill that you wish you had introduced. You have to speak to the bill that you did introduce.
Mr. Speaker, I don't believe that another delegate can define what my bill is. I believe I can define what my bill is, and that's what I'm doing.
No, the bill says this is the bill. Your bill that you introduced is not the Hyde Amendment bill.
It literally is, Mr. Speaker. Can I speak to my bill, please?
You're going to be ruled out of order, but you can speak. If you continue to go down the path you're going on, you're going to be ruled out of order. So you will not be able to speak. So speak to the bill at hand.
Mr. Speaker, this bill codifies language that says that taxpayer money should not be used to go towards abortions. More recently, this bill has come under fire, and we've seen politicians campaign against this issue, and so I felt it was necessary to codify it into Virginia law. We came into committee hearing ready to present the bill with the intent that I had for it, and we were denied that opportunity. We were denied the opportunity to add amendments. We were denied the opportunity to even have a life of the mother exception, which is something that I want clearly laid out in this bill. It's unfortunately become a circus. The intent of this bill is that taxpayers not be forced to something that goes against their religion and their conscience. And the fact that I'm denied the ability to do what I want with my own bill, the fact that it's been railroaded and derailed into something that is not the bill that I put forward, is disappointing. I've been clear about what my language is, and I know that the speaker has made his ruling, but I will not allow these babies and these mothers to be politicized. If this is how it's going to go today, I move to strike this bill.
Mr. Speaker.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Speaking to the motion to strike.
The delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, the delegate has reminded us many, many times that he's a former prosecutor, right? He's an attorney. So to come off and say, oh, we're going to blame DLS, we're going to blame the attorneys at DLS for not giving us back the bills we asked for, that we somehow, as attorneys and as prosecutors, can't read the words in our own bills, right? And I'm not surprised. I have a feeling I know what happened. I suspect it happens all the time. You get a bill, you read the text, you forget to read the second enactment, which says these sections are repealed. And so maybe you didn't click through to see what pieces of the bill that were being repealed actually did, and maybe didn't understand the full effect of your bill. But Mr. Speaker, that's our job as legislators, right? We don't introduce bills and hope that the folks at DLS got it right. We read our bills. We know what they do. We find out what they mean, Mr. Speaker, and then we're responsible for what happens next, right? And Mr. Speaker, this delegate isn't the first person to stand on this floor having to defend a bill that was put in properly and denied the opportunity to do what he wanted with his bill, because it happened to me, right? I'm not perfect. I've had some bad ideas before. I'm sure you guys will agree. Ayes and nays. And one of the things that happens is you put those bills in and anything can happen. And you got to be willing to deal with the consequences of what might happen. And so, Mr. Speaker, members of the House, I would encourage, we need to vote on what this bill says, right? We need to vote on what this bill was put in to do. And so, Mr. Speaker, I would encourage the members of this body to vote no on the motion to strike.
Question is, you'd like to speak on the motion to strike?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, Mr. Speaker, speaking to the motion to strike.
The delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert.
Mr. Speaker, the motion to strike is a courtesy afforded to other members each and every session, almost each and every day. I see the delegate from Fairfax shaking his head. It's happened twice today that a motion to strike has been granted by this body without thinking. But we wouldn't have this political spectacle if we allowed the gentleman to strike his bill, would we? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question is, shall the motion...
Mr. Speaker.
Oh, the delegate from Spotsylvania, Caroline, Delegate O'Rourke.
Witness protection.
Spotsylvania, Delegate O'Rourke.
Mr. Speaker, members of the body, this is my 35th session, and during that tenure, I can recall, I think, only one time when a member was not allowed the courtesy of striking their own bill. I would just suggest to all the members here, consider the consequences. If you talk to any of our fellow legislators across the Potomac, they'll tell you when they put in a bill up there, they lose control of it. But within this chamber, it has always, with that only one exception, and I will say candidly, that exception was done for political reasons, and it was done by us. And that makes it, in my mind, wrong for both sides. We have a long-standing practice that if it's your legislation and it goes totally awry, and I've had that happen to my bills, I put it in to do one thing, and by the time it came out of the committee process, it was doing the exact opposite. And I would ask for it to be stricken, and that courtesy was afforded. I would ask that you honor the gentleman's request to strike his bill or understand the consequences that it may come home to roost with all the rest of us at some future juncture. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from Caroline resume the floor for purposes of question?
Will the delegate
I yield gladly.
Mr. Speaker, I ask the gentleman on the question of his 35 years of experience, have you ever in that 35 years known the Speaker's ruling to be overruled, to be questioned?
I believe, but I'm not certain, and so I can't state yes or no with all certainty. I would have to do some homework, but I'd be glad to do that.
Let's keep it moving.
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion.
Thank the Speaker.
Speaker, I move to pass by the motion to strike. Keep it easy so we can all vote green.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon, moves that we pass by the motion to strike. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion to strike is passed by.
Ayes and nays. Ayes and nays.
Clerk will do a recorded vote.
We're green. This is a green. We're going to vote to pass by.
Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 51, noes 48.
Ayes 51, noes 48. The motion to pass by. The motion to strike the bill is Passed.
Mr. Speaker?
Now, the delegate from Fairfax, Delegate
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion.
Simon. Delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we engross House Bill 404 and pass it to its third reading and encourage the members of the body to vote no on the motion to engross.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
The delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate.
Mr. Speaker, I'm trying to recall everything I know about parliamentary procedure and Jefferson's manual, and am I not correct that the gentleman's motion puts him in the posture of having to vote in the affirmative on the motion to engross?
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Mr. Speaker, we've done this, talk about something we've done about maybe 15 or 16 or 25 times today, is we've had people move amendments and ask that the body reject them. It is not at all uncommon for someone to make a motion and then further ask